everyone, welcome to my channel. So in today's video I'll be doing a Q&A. I like to do these monthly where I just pick random questions from the previous maybe 4 or 5 videos and try to answer those the best I can. I'm sorry I can't get to all of the questions. I wish I could. It's not that your question isn't important. It's just that we again just pick kind of random questions and it's just hard to get to them all. But I do appreciate each and every comment you guys leave and questions. I think it's just a fun platform where we can learn from each other, and I always feel like I don't want to sound like a know-it-all, like I have the answers to everything, because there's so many other ways to do things than how I do it. But I will definitely try to share what has worked for me over the years. So let's get right to it. The first video is the Q&A from last month, and Elizabeth says she is looking to buy some kind of a saw to just make regular cuts with. I'm hoping you can suggest something that won't totally intimidate me. I know saws are intimidating. I even still, after years of using them, still feel intimidated. I think we should always feel that way when working with saws. I always try to keep in mind where that blade is going and just not get my fingers anywhere near. And sometimes you have to watch, or they kind of jump back at you. For me, if I would need to pick from any of my saws that I use, I would probably still go with the circular saw. I will leave some links down below. You don't need I love Milwaukee brand things because they last for years. You pay more, but they just really last a long time and they do a good job. But if you don't do a lot of cutting, you don't need an expensive saw like that. I know there's other brands, maybe Black & Decker, DeWalt, I'm sure are probably just a bit less pricey. But again, the circular saw, you can kind of do anything with. You can cut a board, lengthwise, or just chop it however, whatever length you want. They're a little more, I want to say they're a little bit intimidating maybe in a way, because I always like to clamp my wood down onto a surface so it doesn't slide around for me. That does help some, but I feel like the circular saw may have less, guides and guards and stuff than what some of the other saws have, but it's totally doable though. If I can use them, anyone can. I do love my table saw and my miter saw. Those are probably a bit more expensive, but they're just so handy if you want to, again, cut a board lengthwise. You just run it over that table saw, and then to chop it to size, it's just easy to use the chop saw or the miter saw. But yeah, I'm thinking again, the circular saw would be my pick. And I gotta say, when I started out with trying to create things with wood, I used a hand saw. I know I've mentioned this before, but tedious, yes, it took a lot of time, but it still did the job, and that's probably your safest saw you can get. But that definitely works too. If you just have a small project and just need to make a few cuts or whatever, you can always use the hand saw too. Trudy says, can you please tell me what kind of vacuum you use? Is it rechargeable? Yes, it is. I love my Dyson Cyclone V10 vacuum, and that is not even the latest model that is out. I know you guys could, if you are looking for a vacuum like this, you would get it at a much better price than what I paid for it. I think it's almost half price than when I bought mine maybe two years ago, I think. But it's just a powerful little vacuum cleaner, and it's just so easy to grab and no cords involved. I can usually sweep in the middle setting. There's 3 settings, low, kind of the medium, and then the high, suction. And I always have mine set in the middle, and I can usually sweep our whole middle story plus maybe the basement stairs and the upstairs stairways without recharging. So I think that's pretty good, and that way, once I have that done, I put it back on the charger and do some other cleaning while it charges. Then it's ready for the upstairs or basement. But I will link it down below if you're looking for a good vacuum. I just love my Dyson sweeper. Janice says a lot of her house here still has, or I shouldn't say still has, a lot of people prefer that, but it has an all wood, a chestnut wood in it, and I'm assuming that would probably be the trim and the doors and stuff. And then some of her home has a white woodwork, and she really loves that. The question is, I feel guilty if I painted the wood in the other rooms. What can you suggest to get that white look? I have some ideas already, but would like to get some ideas from you. I may be the wrong person to ask, because you guys know me, I love my white. But I still like to see if it's a certain color stain, I could, deal with it. But when we moved into this house, this was built in the 90s, and here in our area, I don't know, was it this way everywhere, but everybody put oak in their homes, and this certain stain that ended up turning orange. I just was not fond of any of the trim or the doors in this house, and over the years I ended up painting everything. But I don't know how your chestnut wood looks. There's still, I like to see like maybe a lighter kind of natural looking stain with white, and then also dark can kind of work too. I'm just not really fond of that in between orangish sheen, but again, that's probably just my opinion here. But I think you can definitely incorporate lots of white with some wood. That's still your natural, it looks good together. And for myself, I probably wouldn't feel guilty if I just love the white look. I'd probably just paint the wood. But again, I may be the wrong person to ask, because I know a lot of people would just say, oh, don't paint that pretty stained wood. But it's just, I guess, what we prefer. For me, I think white just opens up so many doors to, if you have everything white, you can pretty much add anything into that room and it's going to look okay. Versus if you have some kind of weird stained wood that kind of clashes with your other colors, then again, just my opinion, I guess. It's not that you can still make it pretty, I think, with anything you have. But for me, I would probably need to have the white trim. So Beverly asks, who taught you your computer skills? Being that I grew up Amish, without all those things, I do get a lot of questions about that. I attended a public school, so we always had computers in our classrooms, so I got a little touch of that, during my, school years. But as far as trying to figure out, some of these programs, I just spent a lot of time. Everything's self-taught. I never took any lessons or anything. I do confess, when I was Amish, I actually borrowed someone's computer to design some books on. I didn't have internet with that, but I used Microsoft Office Word to design some books. And if you know anything about those programs, you're probably laughing right now. They're not design friendly at all, but I managed to somehow use them to design these books. Nothing fancy or anything, but I do remember being up late at night trying to figure this out, because I am the type, I could not go to sleep until I had something figured out. So I did a lot of that, just keeping at it and not giving up and just trying to feel my way through. And of course I didn't have the internet, so I couldn't watch videos, on how to do something, so I just basically tried to figure it out myself. And I did end up publishing a couple books. That was years ago, and the books were more toward, geared for the Amish community. One was a baby book where you kept kind of a baby record keeping book. You kept track of, what your baby was doing, and all these little memories and stuff you could write in or whatever. And then the other was a wedding planner book, also geared toward an Amish wedding. But I did really well with those books, just selling them locally here in our area, and then some out of state, Pennsylvania and Indiana. But it was a lot of fun, and it just made me realize what all can be done, just having a computer. I have definitely had a lot of fun with computers. I have always enjoyed trying to learn new things, but I definitely don't know everything about them. So Mary Schultz asks, do you bleach the drop cloths? I have in the past already bleached them, where I've maybe soaked them in a bathtub with a whole jug of bleach and some water and just soaked them in there for hours. And it does get them just a little bit lighter, but maybe to me it just wasn't worth the hassle. I kind of like the color they are. I always wash them in hot water and soap and then dry them in the dryer before I do anything with them, including any products I have on my Etsy shop. I always pre-wash everything, and it just really softens up that fabric, and I always feel like it just may even make it a shade lighter just by washing it. But I love drop cloth. As you guys know, I use it a lot, but no, I do not. Generally, I don't bleach it. Pearls and Peonies asks, how old are your boys? Are they planning on being in the family business? Our boys are 20 and 13. The oldest is Kenny. He'll turn 21 in October, and then Ephraim is 13, and he will turn 14 in July. So they are just growing up. They're both, taller than I am, which it doesn't really take a lot to do that, but and as far as planning on being in the family business, I cannot really imagine that. They kind of take zero interest in what I do, sadly, but I wasn't really expecting maybe that a guy would be really interested in, you know, working with decals or sewing or painting furniture. So it's okay that they, you know, don't, but it would be fun if they would. So Missy Green says, your parents built the house in the 90s. I'm assuming they were still Amish then. How hard was it to add electricity to the home? My dad is an electrician, so he ended up doing all of that for us, which we were really thankful for. He's kind of a jack of all trades, and he got the job done. I don't feel like I lack in any outlets anywhere, but I do know he had some issues with getting to some of the walls where you know, he wanted to run a wire through or whatever. But we do have these attic crawl spaces on the edges of our both sides of the house. I think that kind of helped. He was able to, you know, go in there to, you know, get the wires down through the walls. But it looks like you live in an old home and want to update your electric work, and I'm sure, you know, that's possible. And then Missy also comments on she loves the green color on our deck. I am so excited to get that out. We have some more signs of spring around here, and I just love green, so I'm definitely probably going to use the same green pillows on the front porch. I just think that's such a nice, you know, outdoor color to use. So June says, what do you mean by pinning wood to the wall? I think I had probably talked about that maybe with shiplap. If you know, fasten the shiplap to the wall, I had probably said pin it to the wall. I don't know, maybe that's a weird term that we've always just used, but it would be an air nailer, so I guess nailing it to the wall would be the proper way to say that. But what I call my pinner is just a small, like it just shoots small little nails or staples, and I guess that's why I call it, you know, pinning it instead of, you know, nailing it to the wall. But again, the proper way would probably be to say nailing. Norma Sutherland says, did you make the mullions for your windows or purchase them? I get a lot of questions about them, and it's kind of funny because to me they're the most annoying thing. I love to see them. I like the cozy look of grills or mullions in the windows, but they're so hard. I mean, they're not that hard, but they're such a hassle to remove, clean the windows, and then put them back in. Over the years, it's actually gotten easier. I think they get more bendy and some of the little tips break off, so it's actually easier to put them back in. But I have these nightmares of being a young girl at home and having to clean windows and then trying to get those grills, you know, back into the windows. It was always a challenge. And then sometimes you'd think you'd have that last thing kind of, you know, put in there, and it would snap, another would snap back out. It was always a hassle to get those things in, but eventually we do want to replace windows. They're not very good anymore, but for now they'll work. So I smiled a little about the next question here. Do you get bears coming to your bird feeder? If so, how do you deal with it? We do not have bears in our area. I wish we would. I love, you know, wildlife and nature, and I would love to live somewhere in the mountains where we'd actually have bears, but maybe they would be a nuisance then. I'm not sure, but no, here in Ohio, northeastern Ohio, we would not have any. I know some parts in Ohio they have, you know, sighted bears already, but it's really quite rare. So the next questions are from the Trash to Treasure video. Phyllis says, hello, I just stumbled across this video and want to know what you are using for transfer paper. I think on that Trash to Treasure I had done a lot of transferring decals onto some of the items I redid. And my transfer paper is one of a kind. First of all, I buy the Frisco brand transfer tape, and I will link that down below because to me that is the best. But even for me, it's a bit sticky. I just like my transfer tape when it's almost not sticking anymore. I think that's when it works the best. I will even sometimes run it over all my surfaces here, maybe the sofa and sometimes even the floor. Just to get it less sticky. It's so much easier to work with. Now, of course, when I ship decals out, if you guys buy decals, I can't do that. I just use brand new, you know, transfer tape. And that's also doable, but you definitely spend a little more time with getting those letters to stick to your surface if the transfer tape is really sticky. So I just reuse and reuse mine, and to me, the more I use it, the better it gets. Okay, so I had to change my battery. Not quite sure where I was going. I think I was talking about transfer tape. But yeah, for me, since I, you know, create a lot of signs and add a lot of decals to surfaces, it's just worth it to just keep my transfer tape and just keep using it. I can use it, my jobs go faster if I have a transfer tape that is not as sticky. So the next question here is Sandy James asks, I have a general question about painting. Is it necessary to sand an item prior to painting so that the paint you apply stays put? I had a bad experience using my sprayer to paint some cubby shelves. I didn't sand enough and the paint is just sliding off. That's too bad. I've had that happen too. Does it depend on the paint that you have in the sprayer, for example chalk paint, or is sanding the key to success? I always kind of go by how the surface feels to begin with. If it is one of those smooth and maybe even fake wood surfaces like a veneer, I generally use my sander to just rough it up a bit. And then it does depend on the paint sometimes too. I'm one that uses a lot of Do It Best brand paint because our local hardware carries it and I love it. They have a paint and primer in one, so your primer isn't separate. So that would make it, I feel like the paint actually sticks better than maybe years ago it used to, with just buying just paint and not the primer. I love the idea of paint and primer in one. I think that really has improved over the years. But I also feel like chalk paint does stick better sometimes the surfaces. Any like chalk or milk paint. It's just something with that flat matte finish. It just seems to stick better. But of course you would need to coat it then with either wax or a polyacrylic or something, or I always feel like I need to do that so that it's easier to, dust it or clean it. But if I sand, I don't sand to take a finish off because I've really had bad luck with that. For example, if I take an old piece of furniture and would just really sand it down to where I'd actually remove some of the stain or the varnish, they probably used varnish back then, that will actually cause some weird stains to bleed through. So sometimes you want to keep that sealer on there and maybe just rough it up enough so that your paint will stick without, going past that layer of that sealer, because old wood can sometimes just do weird things like bleed through, and I've dealt a lot with that with, repainting old furniture. But I've kind of learned over the years there's kind of a happy medium, don't sand too hard, but yet just sand enough to kind of, rough or dull the surface up a bit. And there's also liquid sandpapers you can use. The crud cutter would be considered kind of a deglosser. I think that even helps. I've already used those. But for me, I sometimes like to concentrate on the top coat instead of the bottom. It's okay though to sand it, dull it up a bit. There's nothing wrong with that. But after you paint it, maybe apply a coat or two of polyacrylic. That really does a wonderful job of protecting your paint. And then also wax. I use a lot of the Annie Sloan clear wax, or Valspar also has some wax that I've used. Both do a wonderful job of protecting paint. But it's still not to say that it can't still chip off. I think often that's why I will distress some of my pieces, like maybe distress the edges. That way, if something does come off just somewhere in the middle or whatever, it'll look like it's supposed to be. It'll kind of go with how the edges are distressed, if that makes sense. And the next question here is also about using primer. I've noticed that you don't use primer before you paint your pieces. Yeah, most of the time I don't. Again, my paint would have primer in it already. But at times, again, if I have that old piece of furniture and I suspect it might have some bleed throughs, I will use a good primer. One of my favorites is that shellac based. I'm pretty sure it's either Kills or Zinsser brand. The base is not water or oil, but shellac, and it does a wonderful job of blocking stains. But the cleanup is harder than I usually toss my brushes out after I use them because water won't clean them up. So it definitely has some kind of a little, almost like an oil base, but it again does an awesome job of blocking stains. Heather D asks, what is that Valspar cabinet color called? I think she's talking about the one I had used that paint for a sign. I turned an old door into a sign. Beautiful kind of greenish color. If I remember correctly, it is called Mellow Tune. So Alan says, I didn't see you put drainage holes in the bottom of the planter. I did get a lot of questions about that. I can always drill some in if I need them, but so far it's kind of worked. I don't see that the plants are not looking healthy, and I think the planter is kind of deep enough that it has enough space, on the bottom with soil that it kind of absorbs, some of the water there. And I don't try to overwater. I think it's always best to keep them on the dry side, house plants. But if I decide to move it outside this summer, I will definitely need to keep an eye on that because I don't want it to be waterlogged all of a sudden. So Sue says, I keep noticing the kitchen counter behind some of your dining table shots. It looks marbled. Did you faux paint it or is it real marble? It's not real marble. I wish it was. I appreciate you thinking it is. Years ago, I took one of those Giuliani, I think is the name, countertop kits to create that look. And those kits are more made to, make something look like granite or Corian or something like that. But I wanted marble looking tops, so I just kind of went my own route to create the veins and tried to make it look real. And for now it'll work, but definitely someday we do want to replace them since they are just wood countertops. The next question here is just wondering, where is the light fixture over your table from? That is from Lowe's several years ago. I love that fixture too. I was really impressed when I found it. I thought it kind of fits with our rectangle table. Emma asks what kind of sewing machine I have. It is an old sewing machine that I got probably, I don't know, maybe 25 years ago. The brand is Genome, and it's still going, but I should probably get it to a place that fixes sewing machines because my reverse doesn't work anymore. But I like it. I've always enjoyed sewing with it. It does not serge. I have a separate serger for that, and I believe that is a Brother brand. So Beverly asked what kind of a paint and sealer that I used on our dining room table. I had actually done a video on that, and I will link it down below or put a card up above here. I know I had some stress with that table. I'm trying to think what it was. I think it was really humid outside and my paint didn't want to dry like it should have. And I think I used a paint that I wasn't as familiar with, if I remember correctly, but it all seemed to kind of turn out in the end. But I know I did use Annie Sloan Clear Wax as a top coat. That really just does a good job of protecting paint. It kind of hardens the surface and makes it nice and smooth and easy to wipe down. Now the table has a few nicks of paint coming off here and there, but I don't mind. I distress those edges again. That way if there are a few nicks here and there, it kind of fits the look. So Linda Cox says, your cats are so pretty. Thank you, I agree. Do you have any tips to keep them from clawing your furniture? Yeah, I do struggle with that. Twinkle the male does not do that, but Pebbles, the little female, is my destructive kitty. In fact, the chair that I'm sitting on right now is one of her favorite clawing posts. And I will yell at her when she does that. I will say her name sternly and say no, and she knows what I mean. She'll actually stop at the moment, but sometimes she'll get a naughty look and just kind of do it again. I think it's just cat nature. I think what I should do is probably either make something or invest in a scratching post to hopefully maybe entice her to use that instead of the furniture. But thankfully she doesn't do it on our good furniture. And if I say good furniture in our living room, it's not that nice anymore, but it's still our main sofa and love seat. She will just kind of go for this chair that is usually in the living room, and then downstairs I have a little recliner that she will scratch on too. So I'm not sure, is it the fabric that she likes, or I'm not sure why she chooses those two pieces. Brooke Martin asks, what is the pen you're using on the edges? Is it a paint pen, a permanent marker? I'm thinking on that Trash to Treasure video, I probably use my paint marker. It's Sharpie brand, and it's one of those markers that you actually need to shake, like the paint is inside with a little ball, to mix it up. It's a real paint marker, but if I can't find that marker for some reason, I will just use a regular Sharpie marker. That works too. So next I have a few questions here from the Freezer Meals video. So Lisa asks, how long do you keep things frozen? Just for the week? And do you cover the food in the containers? I don't cover it more than just with the lid. If I, do a foil pan, like I freeze a whole, foil pan, I will put a couple layers of foil over it and, really tuck it in on the edges, and that usually seems to hold out well. And how long do you keep things frozen? I usually, 2 to 3 months, I think things are usually okay. And I gotta say, usually it gets eaten before then, but I would definitely trust it for that long. So I did get a lot of questions about using raw eggs in the cheesecake recipe. I probably should have addressed that in the video. I apologize for not doing that. I did put some raw eggs in there, and we have always done that for that recipe. It's always been fine, but I do understand if people don't want to do that. So if you make that cheesecake, I would just keep the eggs out if you're not comfortable with that. I know raw eggs are actually more nutritious for you than cooked ones, but they can also carry, salmonella and cause some food poisoning. So it's just using common sense. Again, if you're uneasy about something like that, I probably wouldn't do it. I don't want anyone getting sick because of me here. So the next questions are from the video of where I turned the terracotta pots or planters into kind of cement looking ones. So Missouri Girl asked, what did you apply spackling with, and why did you apply spackling then paint over? The spackling I applied using just a little scraper tool, or maybe it was a Pampered Chef, like a food scraper. I know I have one of those on hand. I think I may have used that one to apply the spackling over the sides of the pot. And then I painted over that. And the reason for the spackling was to just create that textured look on the pot, to make them look like cement pots. I was able to add more dimension to the look of them, to make them look aged than if I had that textured look. So the next question here is, does your mom and sister watch your videos, and are they as crafty as you? My mom and sister watch my videos. In fact, my whole family is so supportive of my channel here. So encouraging. I get so much support from them. I'm so thankful for that. Are they as crafty as you? They definitely have their different things they enjoy doing too and are very good at. It may be different things than what I do. I'm more into the making things and then painting and that sort of thing. My sister, I've talked about this before, she's an artist. She draws wildlife, beautiful artwork. And then she also is a gardener. I love to garden too, but I always go to her for advice. She's good with knowing the names of the plants or what's wrong with them. And in fact, I'm always after her to have a gardening channel. I feel there's not many out there. Again, Garden Answer, you guys know I'm a fan of them. I watch them all the time, and there's a few others that I like, but I feel there's not many gardening channels out there. And I always tell her she would be really good with that because she has a lot to offer. And my mom also is, crafty. She likes to, try new things. She's really good with sewing and cooking, and over the years she's done, many projects that I remember, she wasn't afraid to just try new things. So Jackie is asking, can you use the planters outside if you spray them with the sealer? Again, this was something kind of new for me to do these little makeovers on these terracotta pots, but I'm definitely going to try it, and I'll try to keep you guys updated on how they turn out. But I think especially with that clear coat, it should protect the finish. Even the cement looking ones I think should be okay. So I'm definitely going to see how they hold out this year. So Dwight asks, how do you keep your cats out of your indoor plants? I must say, so far I don't have any issues with that. I'll probably just say it here and then they'll start, but thankfully they kind of stay away from them. But I know, some people have issues like that, so if you have any tips for that, just feel free to share in the comments below. And then the final video here is the antique haul that I had done. So the first question here is, do you ever head over to the Hartville flea market? I had to smile when I read that because I remember I have many good memories as a young girl. We would make a yearly trip to the Hartville flea market, and I don't know, is it still the same like how it used to be? I should definitely go check that out, but I haven't in the recent years. I've not been there. Hartville is also here in Ohio. It is, I think, also in the northeastern end of Ohio here. I'm not quite sure, but if you're interested in flea markets, check that out. How can you tell if something is antique or someone did a farmhouse DIY? It's funny because walking through some of our antique malls here in the area, some of the booths actually have reproduction things, and I'm always kind of surprised. To me, I feel like an antique mall should just be that, all antiques, but there's definitely some nice products on the market that look old and that I'd even buy because they're probably more affordable, but I still feel like an antique mall probably should just stick with antiques. But I can always kind of tell if it just looks too nice maybe, or too evenly maybe distressed, or I think you can just get that feel of, if you hold something up, you can just kind of tell, is it a brand new product just made to look old, or is it an actual antique? So thank you so much for watching this video. I hope it wasn't too long for you here. I admit the Q&A videos are not my favorite ones to film. I'd much rather be out there doing something and sharing with you guys than just talking like this, but at the same time, I love that I can, maybe answer some of your questions or help someone out, with these videos here. And this video will in no way affect Wednesday's video that I usually publish, just so you guys know. And I hope you're having a great week, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Bye.